All right, I'm going to go over the directions for activity 3. Our goal is to find evidence to answer the investigation question. So you're going to be using tokens and vocabulary words to answer the investigation question for this lesson. How do substances change into different substances during chemical reactions? Remember that our goal by the end of chapter 2 is that we're going to need to explain to the people of Westfield how rust in their water formed. This activity is going to give you an opportunity to explain a similar idea to someone at home. So let's take a look at the directions for activity 3. This is activity 3, page 1, if you'd like to go to that page and look at the directions. This activity is going to include a slide with two chemical reactions on it. You're also going to use everyday items to represent the tokens, and the tokens represent different atoms of different elements in the chemical reactions that you're going to try to model. So when you look at the directions, you're going to look at the chemical reaction on the card that you choose. You only have to do one of them. Look at what reactants are involved. The reactants are what you start with as far as the substances, and the products, the ending result after the chemical reaction. So the new substances that you produce because of the chemical reaction that are involved. On your card or next to your card, you're going to use everyday items instead of tokens to build your reactants. And I'll explain that in a few minutes. Then you're going to tell someone at home and show them how the reactants became the products in the chemical reaction that you chose. Finally, you're going to answer the investigation question by using vocabulary words to show that you understand what's happening in your chemical reaction by answering the investigation question, how do substances change into different substances during chemical reactions? And you have the word bank right underneath your investigation question in your directions. Okay, so I'm going to use a modeling tool, looks like this, to model a different chemical reaction than what you're going to be completing in this activity. But this should give you a pretty good idea of what you need to do. You can complete this activity at home using just about anything, but in the modeling tool, I have tokens that I can use. So in this particular chemical reaction, this is very similar to kind of what you did in the warm-up today. If you look, we started with water in the warm-up as our reactants, and we ended up with hydrogen and oxygen by themselves. So this reaction is kind of the opposite. Chemical reactions always go left to right. So we start with hydrogen. So I'm going to take 2 hydrogen tokens, and I'm going to place them down as my reactants. So I have 4 total hydrogen atoms, and I have 2 oxygen atoms as my reactants. And those are joined together. Now, what we've learned is in a chemical reaction, if I was explaining this chemical reaction to a partner, I would take these tokens out for hydrogen and oxygen, and I would put them underneath as reactants. Next, I might move the tokens to show that when a product is formed, this means that the ending substance is made with exactly the same kind of atoms. They're just rearranged. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these tokens, and I'm going to show how the rearrangement happens to make a water molecule. This is my first one, and it mimics this up here. And my other 2 hydrogens with my oxygen to make my second water molecule that would be represented like this. So in this chemical reaction, okay, I used exactly the same atoms and the same number of atoms to form a brand new product, which would be a water molecule. Okay, so what you're going to try to do is you do not have tokens at home. So what we're going to need to have you do is use everyday objects to represent the different atoms that are involved in the chemical reactions that you're going to use. So I have this in the slideshow, but here's chemical reaction card A. Here's chemical reaction card B. So what you're going to do is use everyday items. If you were to use chemical reaction card A, you're going to need 2 white, you're going to need a green atom, you'll need a red atom, and you'll need a purple atom. Okay, and kind of the idea behind this is you can use anything that you want to represent these colors. You just have to make your own key. So, some things that I thought about possibly using to represent a gray token, a red token, a white token, purple, green, and blue would be noodles, beans, pieces of cereal like Cheerios, possibly. Could use buttons, you could use game pieces, Legos, popcorn kernels, paper clips, really anything that you have around the house you could use. Another thing that would be probably much easier for you to do is to make your own tokens by just taking a piece of paper, cutting them into small squares, and drawing like a gray X on it, or drawing a red X on it, or leaving the white paper blank. And you could make up all of these different representations of atoms so that you can do the rearranging. Okay, so what you're going to try to do is you're going to try to make this physical model and using anything you want to represent these atoms. Okay, but remember that each colored atom must be representing a different object. So for existence, for example, my red atoms, I may choose Cheerios. If I'm going to use Cheerios to represent the red tokens, then I need to find 4 Cheerios. Maybe I use Legos to represent my white tokens. I might find 2 white tokens, which would be my white Legos instead. I might use paper clips for my purple tokens. I would find 2 paper clips. So you're going to have to get all of this kind of put together and organized before you do the activity. Okay, so what I also did for you, and this is in the slideshow, I have a modeling tool link for you that you can click on this link and you can use the tokens kind of like I did. So you can see that you've got all kinds of different colored tokens that you would just start by dragging these in to make your reactants. If this is easier for you to do, I'm fine with you doing it this way also. It might make more sense for you to do it this way. The whole idea is that we try to come up with a good answer to the investigation question, which is remember, how do substances change into different substances during chemical reactions using your vocabulary words. So I'm going to ask you to put together your sentence after you get done with the activity, and I will have a Google form on today's agenda that I'd like you to go into and type your sentence, and I'll share a few of those sentences in the next lesson, which would be Monday's lesson.